Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is our fifth international webinar. And today's topic is gem treatments and their effect on the value. Joining me today are industry canons, I can say, which we are feeling very privileged that they accepted our invitation. We have here from the US, Tom Underwood from the San Diego Gem Lab, and more importantly, also the inventor and owner of the Quantum Leap appraisal software. There is now a new version of the system, and we will also hear a little bit about it later in the presentation.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you. Also joining us today is Shirley Mitchell from the UK. Also, I think just saying Shirley Mitchell, it's the brand name. It's enough to recognize. But also, she is the member license of the Fresh Jewelry Valuers Association, the new British Association for Jewelry Valuers, and also we will hear about it later today. And of course, together with me, Menachem Sevdermish, the CEO and founder of Gemewizard. And as always, is wearing more than one hat, one of a gemologist, the other is a gem dealer, and also gem cutter, but in these cases, we will have a less effect of this, to the less contribution to the presentation. My name is Guy. I'm the VP Gemological Services of Gemewizard. And let's deep dive into gem treatments. So when we are talking about treatments or enhancements, these are two terms that are commonly being used in the market. We are talking about processes other than cutting and polishing that are done to the gemstones in order to change their color or intensify it, improve their clarity, improve their stability, or even change the complete appearance to a more precious gem. Now, there is here a kind of a hot potato that we prefer not to play with, just to explain it very in general, that actually every enhancement could be legit as long as the seller fully discloses about it. And everything, of course, is sellable for the right price and the right disclosure. But we will try to still give some borders into that and explaining where it becomes less acceptable in the market. Most of the countries today have their trade rules, and also we have some gem trade associations that are bounding all their members under their code of ethics umbrella that giving the seller the need to disclose any treatment in the clearest way it can have. And one of the main problems that we have with these things is that sometimes these definitions are not clear, and we will explain to it a little bit later. We are dividing the treatments into three subdivisions. The first one is traditional enhancement, also sometimes being called routine enhancements. These are treatments that are being done to a specific gem variety, and it's very common. How much common? Almost all the gems in the market are being treated with this treatment. And therefore, it's become for the traders, it's become the default, meaning that everything now is treated unless otherwise stated, and it will be also priced according to the fact that it is treated. If it will not be treated, it will get a kind of a premium. For example, we can see here tanzanites. All of them are, not all of them, let's say 90% of the tanzanite that been extracted from Earth looking like this, in these colors. But under relatively simple heating treatment, they are getting these more famous colors. And because of that, that we need to heat the tanzanite in order to get this blue coloring, and most of the tanzanite are being heated, this is a traditional enhancement, and the pricing is built according to the fact that all tanzanites are being heated. The second term that we have is non-traditional, but still acceptable enhancements. These are still common treatment, less common than the traditional ones, but still we can find them at the market. And they are considered acceptable, and of course, as long as the seller provides proper disclosure about them. For example, we see here emerald, and most emerald are being filled by oil. In some cases, we can see also emeralds that are filled by epoxy-based resin. And in these cases, because there is some difference in the way that some markets look at it, the seller must disclose that this fracture filling is done by epoxy-based resin. And we have the third type of enhancement, which are the unacceptable enhancement. Again, unacceptable is a little bit problematic term because everything could be acceptable for some buyers. But we are talking here about treatments that are creating something new, changing the gem variety, or at least creating a false appearance of a more prestige gem. These treatments, this procedure must be disclosed. If it's not being disclosed, it's a fraudulent activity. And they usually, after being disclosed, will be traded with a dramatic price reduction. For example, we can see here a green dyed colorless beryl that because we incorporated some green dye into its structure, it looked like an emerald now. Of course, it's not an emerald, and it must be disclosed, the true variety of it. Now, we have a kind of a problem that the jewelry and the gem and jewelry sector, they know about treatments. They know about the possibility of fraudulent activities, and they are looking for the information about the current state of the gem. Now, there are different ways to describe treatments. And this is a kind of an ongoing debate that never ends because everyone is trying to balance it. We're talking about governmental and non-governmental entities, all of them together trying to create their code of ethics, their trade rules that will give a clear description of the treatments. In one hand, they're trying to do it in a way that it will be clear to the uneducated buyer, but at the same time, they must keep it saleable and acceptable by traders. So it's a very delicate balance. And the current golden path that these entities found is the way of using a set of codes. Yes, please, Shirley.
Yep, no, guys, somebody just mentioned that actually the box is obscuring part of the thing. So if you can, at the top left-hand corner, put the minus mark, it should then reduce it down so that you can move the little bar down so you can see the whole slide.
Yes, you just need to get out from the full screen mode, and then we will probably see everything. Okay, so as we said, some of these entities are using set of codes. These codes either using letters or digits, or they're using some very short verbal descriptions in a way that it will be less startling, but refers to more information that will explain to the uneducated buyer what is this procedure exactly did to the gem. Now, this could have been a great solution, but the problem is that not everyone accepting on the same code system. And we have different sets of codes in the market. There is no one unified set. And we will try now to give some of the leading sets of codes that are being used and explain what they mean. The first set is a unified set by CIBGEO, the Confédération Internationale Bijoux Jewelry Organization, and ICA, International Colored Stone Association, and AGTA, American Gem Trade Association. These are the three biggest gem trade associations in the world. They had a very similar sets of codes, but something like 3 or 4 years ago, they decided to unify their codes to that they will all talk the same language. And their codes, as you can see here, are working according to letters, where N means natural or not enhanced, and other letters are referring to the specific treatments, for example, O for oiling, etc. There is one disadvantage for this system. In some cases, like heating in corundum or oiling in emerald, the traders also look for the intensity or the amount of the foreign filler that was added into the process. And in these codes, we do not have it. We have only the indication for the existence of the treatment. Now, all of these codes are being offered today by these three organizations in their gemstone information manual or retailer guide, etc. From the other side, we have the laboratories. And laboratories are trying to be more scientific in their way of grading treatments or defining treatments. We have the LMHC, which is a consortium of 7 leading laboratories. You can see their names here. I will not mention each one of them. But they unified between them the language that they are using in their labs in order to describe treatments. The first, for example, we have here an example for heating. And for heating, they're using either verbal description, like no indications of heating, or they can use code, NTE. Each one of these labs is using the one that it prefers. Now, you can see here, for example, that once we have some residues and features that we will explain a little bit later about it, they are also adding number into the code to give the exact amount of filler inside. They have the same codes also for oiling, for lead glass filling, for other gem definitions like Paraiba, Padparacha, etc. And we have two other leading laboratories that are not part of this consortium, and they are using their own systems, and we will mention only two because they are the more important ones in the trade. The first one is done by GRS, and they have their own unique system for heating in corundum, very similar to the TE1 to TE5 that we have seen in the LMHC. They are using the letter H to describe heating, and if there is some level of filler inside the fracture, some residues inside fractures, they are adding another letter in lowercase from A to D, depending on the severity of the treatment. The second lab is AGL from the US, and they have their unique system to grade filling in emeralds. For example, they are using not only the level of the amount of filler inside, like minor, moderate, significant, they are also giving the type of the filler, whether it's what they are considered as traditional type of fillers, modern fillers, or something mixed in between. Now, all of these codes, we just review them in very brief, in general, but we will now use these codes also to explain. When we are going now to talk about treatments in gems, we will explain to each gem, to each treatment, which codes affect differently in the trade. And the first one is ruby. And as I believe most of you are well aware, most of the ruby gems that are being offered on the market today are heated, and this is done in order to improve their color or clarity. And because of that, as we mentioned at the beginning, this will be considered as a traditional treatment, and there will not be any effect on the price if the ruby is heated. Now, the codes that we usually see in these cases will be age, HA, TE, or TE1. These are the codes that we will usually see in reports. On the other hand, if we have a gem that, a ruby gem that was not exposed to any thermal enhancement, its price will increase, and it can increase between 50% up to double the price. Menachem, would you like a little bit to elaborate here on this change when it's jumping dramatically and when the effect is less prominent? Just open your mic first.
Yes, we can show it through the our system, but we can talk also generally. Let's say 30 years ago, the effect of heating or non-heating on ruby, even in Thailand, was not so dramatic as it's now. What we found, especially in the last decade, that there is a considerable jump in price between unheated gems and heated gems, especially in sizes above 1 carat, where there sometimes can be a dramatic change in the price. And also this is to do with the origin, but this is a different matter. We can see, you want to show it now on the...
In a moment.
Okay, so we saw that in certain locations, the effect of non-treated gems has got a more dramatic effect than on others. For example, in Africa, the difference between heated and non-heated rubies from Africa is smaller than on other locations that are more prominent. And in sizes above 1 carat, and especially if we are talking about a 10-carat stone, that can be a really dramatic effect. For example, if we are talking about a ruby of 5 carat, which can be $50,000 a carat on a top quality gem, if the stone is unheated, with no residues, etc., completely unheated, a gemstone, it can be really, as you said here, double the price.
Thank you. Shirley, I know that in the British market, we see a slightly different tendency, especially in smaller sizes. Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly, if we're leaving origin out of it, certainly on stones under a carat, and probably smaller, there's less of a price difference between heated and non-heated. But certainly when you sort of approaching a carat and over, then the prices change.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that we can give a kind of a demonstration now to show exactly how this price affecting the how this treatment affecting the price.
Yeah, we are not. Okay.
Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yes, you can sign
Okay.
in. It would be a good idea.
So, yeah. Okay, let's take Ruby.
Yeah. Okay, Guy, can I continue here?
Yes, please take the lead.
Okay, so let's take, let's say, as we said, 5 carat stone. Yeah, 5 carat stone. AAA. You know, when you see a treatment and nothing is written there and you're talking about ruby, that means that the stone is heated. But let's choose the heated. Okay. And then calculate the price. And we are talking here on a particular stone, $38,500 on a very nice color. We can show the color up there. And, you know, it's one of those colors. Now, if that stone is unheated, on that side stone, none, look at it. The price actually almost doubles. That means, as Shirley said, on the larger stone, the effect is dramatic. On 1 carat stone and less, you don't feel it that much. I mean, it can be 10, 20, whatever percentage. But on the larger, more, I should say, more desired gem, this effect of non-heated stone versus heated stone is really substantial.
Thank you. Okay, now we have also another variation of heating. And this is happening sometimes when rubies are being heated, they are put inside a borax powder in order to keep the heating uniform from all sizes of the gem. But because we are getting to a very high temperature during this heating, sometimes some of these borax melt and penetrate into the fractures and leave some residues that we usually call them in gemology flux residues. In these cases, it will decrease the ruby price. How much it will decrease it? We are talking about between 20 to 50%, depending on the severity of the amount of the filler that penetrated into it. We usually will see it with the codes F, meaning filling, or TE2, 3 or 4, or we can see also with the age B or C, depending on the lab. Now, this was a kind of a side effect. No one was planning to add these flux residues into the fractures, but it happened. But we have also the same case with a deliberate fracture filling that's being used in order to fill in these fractures to make them to look more invisible, to improve the clarity, but it's not really improving the clarity, just improving the appearance of the clarity. And in these cases, because the treatment is much more excessive comparing to the heating with the side effect residues, we will see also that the price is much more negatively affected from it. For example, if we are talking about filling by this box of flux in a very excessive level, we're talking about TE5 or HD, the maximum in the laboratory scale, or even filling some cavities. Usually it will get the code C1, C2, or C3. We're talking about a discount of at least 50% to the price. And the other way to do it is instead of using borax, we can also use lead-enriched glass, what's also known in the trade sometimes in the abbreviation LGF. And this will be considered as a completely different product by traders. They will not look at it as a ruby anymore. Some laboratories are calling it hybrid product, some are calling it manufactured product. But for traders, these are not part of the ruby category anymore regarding pricing. They have their own pricing, which will run between 50 cents to $20 a carat. Let's do another pricing down just to show you how much these prices affect the price of a ruby. So we have this ruby. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's
keep the same size.
Yes.
Let's
Okay.
keep the same size. Okay, 5 carat is okay, AAA. We were talking before about $77,000 a carat for non-treated, $38,000 for heated. Let's see what happens if it's with residues. Calculate. We see that the price dropped 23,000 from the original 38,000. That means depending on the amount of residues from a heated stone, heated with residues can lose about 30%. But look what happened when you actually do that thing with lead glass filling. The surprise is coming. Boom, $78 a carat. That means if you did buy this stone and thought it is not lead glass, you have lost anything between $23,000, $38,000, or $77,000, depends what stone you thought it is. And another thing we must realize, I think, that that treatment started about let's say 25 years ago. This lead glass, it started only with glass and then with lead glass. But heating of rubies is done for a long time, and it was done, you know, when I started, it was quite common in 1975 in Bangkok and all the area there in Thailand. What happened is that once they started using colors in the fillers, like the lead glass fill, it turned completely useless rubies into some items that really look magnificent. And the prices started rolling down, and a guy is with us over almost 12 years. We used to look at it and see them at about $50 a carat in Tucson. And suddenly I told Guy, I saw it in Bangkok just a year and a half ago. They were asking $3. And then Guy told me, Menachem, go to the booth there just in front of us. They're asking, what was it, 70 cents?
70 cents.
70 cents a carat for ruby. Now, can you call that a ruby? No, this is not a ruby. This is really some kind of a compound. You don't know what is more, the lead glass fill or the ruby component of it. So that's why it's practically, it has a big market, but still very far from reality.
You just mentioned me that there is a joke inside our labs that every time that a gem like this is entering for inspection, it's getting a kind of a nickname of a ruby-filled lead glass.
Yes, not lead glass ruby, yes, the other way around.
Yeah. So let's move forward. Yes, Shilin. Open your mic.
Yeah, I know. Antoinette's got a question. She's asking you and Menachem, if you'd like to.
I would like to keep the question to the end, to the Q&A section, okay? And after that, we will give everyone the full attention to it.
By the way, Antoinette was the first lady in the world who was dead against calling these stones rubies, and she said, this is misleading the public, and this was a huge company calling them rubies. She said, this is not really a ruby, and this is a compound or something, or you can call it corundum treated to look like ruby, whatever you want, but that is not a ruby, because calling it a ruby is really misleading. And, you know, she was right. History proved that she was right.
Okay, so we are moving forward to Sapphire now. And Sapphire is, of course, is very similar to ruby. They are the same mineral. So also the same treatments can be applied. And also we see the same tendency. If we have a sapphire which is heated, this is the default way of thinking for the trade. Every sapphire is heated. We will usually get the code AGA, TE, TE1, and it will be without any change from the pricing charts. If it will be without any heating treatment, without any indications of thermal enhancement, its price will increase by around 50%. We're talking about codes that called N or NTE. A more recent heating treatment that we are now seeing in the market is heating that involving also high pressure, and like in diamond, it's called HPHT. And this treatment is still under debate. The debate is not about the treatment itself, but about the durability of the gem after the treatment. As most laboratories today, leading laboratories, saying that they are not identifying any change in the durability, they are still considered as a subtype of the classic heating. Therefore, there is no change in the price in the market. But who knows, maybe this will change in future. We are still monitoring it in our databases.
Tom knows, no?
We have also the heating with residues in fractures. And as in ruby, if we see this side effect of residue in surface fractures, the same codes F, TE2, 3, or 4, H, B, or C, it will get between 20 to 50% discount. Now, Tom, we talked about ruby, we talked about sapphire and this side effect of residues. Can you give a kind of explanation about the different ways of different companies, different tiers in the market, how they will look like they will look at these residues and fractures and how it will affect on their decisions?
Well, it certainly, Guy, it depends on the gem species we're talking about, and also the extremes. For example, if we're talking about high-end Burmese ruby, any sort of treatment is going to have a dramatic effect that has been demonstrated already. I think of interest here is that there might be, I hesitate to call them cultural differences, but the difference between, for example, the US might look at treatment and downstream marketing versus the way that Europe might look at that. Particularly, maybe we could look at emeralds. Emeralds, in fact, are traditionally oil treated, and then over the last several decades have been epoxy treated in one way or one treatment process or another. I think that process is generally more accepted by the trade and the public here in the US than it is in Europe. Why that is, I'm not sure, but I would say that it's definitely true, excluding the higher end. If you have an emerald, for example, that has extraordinarily little or no treatment, well, no treatment's off the board here, but very little treatment, and it is of high quality color and clarity, then naturally the nature of that treatment is going to have an effect. But for the most part, the difference between oil and epoxy treatment here in the States is not as significant as it appears to be in the UK. Or Europe, I mean.
Thank you, Tom. Menachem, would you like to explain a little bit about the way some sellers see these HBHC codes in the certs and how it affects their decisions?
Yes, well, from our research in the market, major companies, and as Shirley also showed us right today, that in England they handle some of these projects and subjects differently than in other places, especially when you mention epoxy, which is to them look really treatment which is unacceptable in England. But let's say in the generally the leading companies in the world, they would like to buy rubies, sapphires that don't have any fracture filling whatsoever, and once even it's mentioned, that's a no-no for them to buy. However, most of the rest of the world will accept a small or a minor fracture filled by borax or whatever in ruby that can happen all the time. Some major companies that you know will never accept that. This is a project that sort of separated the important companies like leading companies in Hong Kong and the Chinese big trade started being really anti the filling of stones, and anything that is filled look to them, I should say, treated in an improper way. So that means when they
unnatural.
see, yeah, unnatural. When they see the T12, T13, and 4, for them it's a no-no thing. However, there are many dealers that find this in the States, in Europe less, that they accept that because they need a better price for their customers, and they will accept to buy it, especially on the lower end sides, lower sizes, 1, 2 carats. I don't know, Shirley, do you have also your point of view? I think that you told us some of the things that are important in the view of the people.
We're talking about epoxy resin treatment. Or
Yes.
we're talking about. I think the way that it.
I would like to leave the epoxy resin to the emerald section.
I was going to say, I think it fits in better with emeralds. We could come.
Yes,
okay.
I don't want to mix between the things and confuse people here.
But Shirley, what is your reaction about? What's your feeling about the reaction of people with ruby that have some kind of borax inside them from your experience?
I think you've got to separate out the flux healing from when you start adding glass to a product. That makes a big difference. You know, flux healing, there's a lot of flux healed material on the market, and you know, in the UK, and it sells well. But it's getting that differential between flux healing and glass infilling, and also composite material. They're different stages, and you need to understand, I think, each different stage, what then becomes more. I think now, obviously, you know, we know in Tucson we can pick up glass filled composite rubies for $1 a carat.
Yeah.
You know,
so in fact, you say that there is a borderline that separates completely the fact that the accidental flux entered the crack, or something that was done deliberately. You see a border there, clear border there between the acceptance and the prices.
Yeah, but it becomes when you're changing something that is totally unsellable to being something that's beautiful, the underlying, it's still unacceptable. It's still I think it's just got a mask on it, hasn't it? And yeah, that's never really going to sell at anything more than what it's actually worth, which is very, very little.
I'd like to add to that a little bit, Guy, and that is, assuming full disclosure, there is a market for everything, right? And there are dealers who will deal in that material, and there are retailers who will, and consumers who want to buy that material. So I'd like to reinforce the idea that full disclosure is critical in our industry, but it also helps define the different levels at which something would potentially sell and move in.
Yes.
Thank you. What you all three said, it connect very well to the next slide, where we are talking about, again, the deliberate filling. If it's done by flux, still deliberate filling, we are talking about a discount similar as in rubies. But with a lead glass filling, in Sapphire, it could be also enriched with cobalt to create more blue coloring in the filler. We are seeing a much more prominent effect. And what Eric mentioned here in the chat, and I'm taking on my, I'm blaming myself that I forgot to say it. It's very important to say that the reason that these prices were falling so dramatically is that they got to a point where it's not filling fractures anymore. It's using the lead glass as a glue to infuse together the parts of the ruby or sapphires and creating a new gem from nothing. I've been in something like, I think, 10 years ago in a lecture by Ted Temilis, which is well known for his experiments in corundum treatment. And he just demonstrated there how he can disassemble a lead glass ruby just by putting it inside the lemon juice for an hour. So there is here also an issue, not only of disclosure, as Tom mentioned, but also an issue of durability of it. Tomorrow morning, a lady that chose to buy a lead glass ruby and everything was fully disclosed, she will not just want to, I don't know, fix her jewelry. And the jeweler will use a torch without unmounting the gem first, and the results will be a disaster. So yes, there is also a need here for proper disclosure regarding the stability of the treatment. So let's see a little bit how these price changes affect, these treatments affect the price in sapphires.
I think, Guy, that we should also mention that beryllium, you know, the crazy thing that beryllium does
this will be the next thing.
Yeah, beryllium also, because I'm seeing here in the comments of people, beryllium is also something that really affects dramatically the price.
They are right.
Can we select again 5 carats? I think that this is a good 5 carats. Why not? Yes. And then let's choose this time a gem.
A gem quality.
Yes. Royal blue. Amazing. And heated, of course.
Let's start by heating.
Then calculate the price. Well, you are talking about $18,000 a carat for top quality sapphire. Now, if that stone is not heated, the price again will jump dramatically because it's a lot rarer, and it's very rare to find a top quality sapphire which is not heated. For example, in this case, it jumps practically 50%.
Yes. I mistakenly chose a sapphire blue of Burmese origin. We will show also on a regular sapphire.
Let's take something else. This is Burmese, but let's say if we take a regular blue sapphire.
One moment. Okay.
Now we stay with the same 5 carats. Now, gem, of course, a gem from not from Burma. If you calculate the price, it's heated. The price compared to the 20 whatever $1,000 a carat is here half because it's not Burmese. However, if that thing is not heated, it again will jump dramatically, about almost double. Now look what happened when this thing is treated by lead glass or cobalt, whatever, the same thing. Calculate the price. We are talking about $70 a carat. That means this is a totally different item. They take a stone that has got no color, or they take a stone which is completely cracked and fill it with cobalt glass or coat it with it, and it does look like a sapphire, but in fact, it's some kind of a combination of all the treatment and some kind of sapphire inside. But you saw the dramatic effect on the treatment. So we have to be very careful when we purchase to make sure that if the stone is heated, that's okay, it's only half price of the non-heated. But if the stone is treated in a way that is not disclosed to us, like cobalt enriched and lead glass, the price slides to practically nothing.
Thank you,
But
Menachem.
there is a market also for that, you know. As Tom said, there is a market for lead glass filled sapphires. There is a market for everything.
Okay.
Providing you disclose.
Another treatment that our attendants already mentioned is the diffusion. And in one sentence, diffusion is a process where we are using not only heating, but also some chemicals that we are incorporating into the gem to artificially change their appearance. It could be either change or intensify color, like beryllium treatment, or it could be more surface diffusion, which encourage development of optical effects like titanium. These, for the trade, it doesn't matter what was the type of the diffusion, whether it was a surface diffusion, a bulk diffusion that getting into the core, whether there is now a star or not, everything is being traded under the same category, a different product called diffused sapphire. And there is a problem with identifying exactly its prices. The price range is between $5 to $50 a carat, and everything is acceptable inside it. There is no, we didn't find yet the logic behind this, prices that we can create a price chart and give you a kind of a guidance of the sliding scale.
But it's very far from the real sapphire.
Yes, for sure. The next gem is emerald. We already mentioned a few times today that emeralds are being filled by, in its fissures by oil or epoxy-based substances. And because, again, this is a very common treatment, for most markets, if it's filled by a minor quantity of an oil-based filler, it will remain intact. The price will remain intact. The codes will be FOW, which means waxing for opaque stones, CE, abbreviation of clarity enhanced, with a comment regarding minor, traditional, F1, or slight. All of these will get the same no change effect. Also, if we have an untreated gem, which is completely oil-free or very close to it, it will grant a substantial premium up to 50%. It depends whether it's getting the code of N, meaning none or natural, or insignificant. Each one of them have its own different percentage effect. Now, before entering into the demo, I would like also just to mention here that we have also a fracture filling that done by different fillers. It's not necessarily oil-based fillers, but some of them are epoxy resin. And we had, I can tell you that yesterday, when we reviewed the presentation together with our experts, we had a quite a vivid debate about it, and Shirley volunteered to do a kind of a quick survey and to check for us whether there is a change or not if a different filler is being used for the fillers. Shirley, would you like to take the lead?
Okay. Yeah, so I thought I'd check out the differences between the different fillers and see how much of an effect, basically from a discussion that we were having. Now, epoxy resin would be classed as one then that has got a hardener. Once you use a hardener, it's in the material, it doesn't come out because there's a hardener there, and it degrades over time. So the price is then lower for that thing. You can have a viscous based resin that has no hardener in it, for instance, and that with oil seem to be about the similar sort of levels. So it's the fact that you've got the hardener in it that then alters the price per carat. So the price per carat then comes down, and that seems to be quite broad based. I did quite a lot of research today on that. So is a difference as to the terminology is the issue across the world. It's the same with a lot of the terminology once, because it doesn't translate so well across the international field. So I think I gather from Tom it doesn't make much of a difference at all, whereas here epoxy resin, one that's got a hardener, does have a negative effect on the value per carat.
I would say that here in the US, certainly, again, we're excluding higher end gems, emeralds in this case, but what we have to also understand when it's treated with something like Opticon or Gemtrat, that with a hardener, that gemstone is more stable. And I think that's probably what has been marketed here in the US versus the fact that the hardener may wear out and degrade and can't be removed. Consequently, I think it has less of effect on marketability. I'm not suggesting that the amount of treatment and the treatment doesn't have any effect on value. But in moderate and highly included stones, I don't see a whole lot of difference in discounted value here in the US as you seem to see in the UK and Europe.
Thank you, Tom and Shirley. I would like to challenge you a little bit. There are two more recent epoxy resin fillers that are being used in the trade that, according to Laboratories testing, that durability testing that they did for them, they are not degrading over time. These are PermaSafe and Excel. Do you think it will change some of the perception of the market when this treatment will be more common?
Here in the US, I don't think there's going to be a significant change because as I've stated, I believe there's already a general acceptance of the epoxy type fillers over oil as being more stable over time. It's encouraging that other ones are coming out that are even more stable, but there's not been, and maybe it's because of the promotion. And if you think about this, and I don't know where the companies are that are producing the filler you're referring to, but certainly Gemtrat is out of, I believe, New Jersey, and they've actually marketed their product over the last few decades through trade shows and through periodicals and so forth. And that maybe that had an effect on its acceptance in our industry. But I don't think there's going to be a dramatic change here in the US because the change has already occurred.
Shirley?
Okay, so I think it's difficult to foresee what is going to happen in the market with the latest fillers, isn't it? That's a difficult thing. But here, epoxy is the word that is the one that is like, ooh, yeah, because it's the perception, and that's what I'm saying. I think it's a terminology issue that we have here, in that if it's cemented there, and also it depends, do not think it depends on the amount of filler. I think there's a big thing. It's the amount. I don't think people understand how much that can affect the value. You know, if it can come out, then it can be re-oiled, it can be redone. If it degrades over time and it's not disclosed at purchase, that's going to have a negative effect. So I'm not sure if that's possibly why we tend to shy away from epoxy, but we don't tend to use epoxy. Yes, the resin, but do we use the word epoxy resin? You know, are you going to put araldite in your emerald, for instance? You know, is it glued together? How do people perceive that?
Thank you very much, Shirley. This is, of course, we will need to discover by ourselves. One more, Tom, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just one follow-up, here in the US, the filler is not marketed as epoxy. It's marketed by a brand name, right? So you had mentioned, you know, one wouldn't want to use the word epoxy, saying, hey, your emerald is epoxy filled. No, it's treated with Gemtrat or some other filler, is the way it's marketed. So, you know, marketing is important in the way in which treatment is communicated and, well, to the end consumer.
A valid point. Thank you. Okay.
Guy,
yes.
Can I say something? I see from the participants' questions and answers, and a lot of people are mentioning the fact that, in fact, the public world over is quite misled by a lot of the dealers that are actually distributing these things, and their explanation about the treatments are misleading. And I mean, we saw it happening with major companies, and we have to make sure that the public and the organization that we are in touch with, etc., will make sure that the public will understand, because everyone is giving a different explanation what it is supposed to be. They tell you, well, it's like oil. And then you tell them, no, it's not oil, because epoxy is some kind of a glue, and it's actually different than oil. And the same thing they do with other material. I think that there is some kind of, I don't know, intended misleading the public in order to be able to sell more of their products by obscuring some of the facts. We, gemologists all around the world, and laboratories, and experts like you, should make sure that we explain to the public what it is that they are looking at, because to call a lead glass fill ruby a ruby is absolutely crazy. It's misnomer.
I will just looked at the chat, and someone was asking the types of fillers that are available in the market. I'm not going to mention all their names. I will just say that there are above 300 different types of fillers that can be used for emeralds. Among them, more than 70 different oils. So just understand the variety of options that are offered here. Now, yes. We are also again, we are always escalating with the treatments, and we talked about oiling, we talked about resin filling, and now we're talking about dyeing. And in dyeing, we are actually going extreme. We are taking the same oil, the same filler that we use to penetrate into fractures, but now we are mixing it with green dye in order not only to improve the clarity, but also improving the overall color of the gem. And this is, of course, something less acceptable in the market, and usually demand a considerable discount. This, let's say 80% down if we are talking about mild cases, meaning an emerald that was just, its color was intensified. And if we're talking about extreme cases, like this gem here in the picture, it could get up to $1 per carat. I will just mention here that you see this gem, there is a nice story behind it. This gem was submitted to our lab a few years ago. It was weighing 2,000 carats. It's quite a big gem. And it was bought in India by a gem dealer for a lot of money. And when we, in the laboratory, tried to do, simple testing, refractometer, polariscope, everything, there are some issues with the gem. The main challenge was to do a specific gravity. So we arrange a kind of a big ball and the spring to weight, and at the moment it touches the water became green. All the dye was just merging with the water, and everything became green there. And this also gives us a kind of a hint of how much these treatments are really stable and how easy it is to make them out. So now let's go back to the demo. Okay, Menachem, I'm selecting an emerald, take the lead.
Yes. Let's take our 5 carat. Let's take a nice AAA, beautiful vivid green with a touch of yellow. Okay. Okay. Let's say oiling by oil. That's the regular way it is. Calculate the price. We are talking about in a nice stone, 7,000, almost $8,000 a carat. If we are talking about a stone that is none, that means that no oil was discovered there, or insignificant, as they say, the price jumps considerably by 50%. And here again, like Shirley mentioned to us yesterday, it's also to do with location. That means if you're talking about African emeralds without oil totally, the price will jump a little bit. But for example, in Colombia stones, which are free of oil, the price will jump considerably. Now, when we are talking about colored, do we have a colored thing there?
Yeah.
Dyeing?
Filling with a colored filler or dyeing.
Dyeing, okay. Let's have a small heart attack. $70 a carat again. Now, you realize that this is absolutely crazy, that once you really add these color fillers, the price really crumbles down, and that is why it's so important to actually disclose what you're doing, whether it's just oil or whether you are doing it with colored oil, which changes the actual color of the stone. Later, I saw several places of people who were asking, where do we get our prices and how we do it? And I will give you later a couple of sentences how we collect the prices all around the world and what do we do to extract it. Okay, but that's later.
Okay, so we talked about the big three, ruby, sapphire, emerald. We will also just mention in general how some treatments affect other gems. So we have heating, and like in the corundum case, some gems are routinely heated to change their color. These processes are common, well accepted, and usually no price change is recording for them. But if we are looking on the more expensive gems, we see that there is a correlation between the ability to detect heating processes and their effect on the pricing. For example, red spinel and fancy color tanzanites which can today, using advanced instrumentation, can be differentiate whether they are natural or heated, they are usually getting a premium for unheated state. On the other hand, aquamarine, morganite, amber, citrine, topaz, all of these do not leave any traces, any way of indication that the heating process was done. So there is no change for their prices. And because of that, also, most of them are being heat treated in order to improve their color. Irradiation has the same tendency. We can, with irradiation, produce colors, and the ability to detect the irradiation will affect the pricing. For example, if we have gems that have a resulted color, which is noticeably artificial, for example, blue topaz, whether it's the sky blue, Swiss, London blue, whatever they call it, we know that these colors are not available, at least in the higher saturation, in nature. And therefore, the prices are very low. Also, the market is flooded with these stones, so it also decreased the prices. And we're talking about between 5 to 20 per carat for sky blue colors, and the Swiss and London, which need prolonged times, are getting between $15 to $40 per carat. Also the same with blue quartz and blue beryl, known as maxixe, machiche. These usually with prices between $2 to $30 a carat, and they are not available in nature at all. And if the irradiation is undetectable, it's become much more common because everyone is using it, everyone is upgrading their gem appearance, and because it's undetectable, it's accepted and there is no price change for it. For example, we have the cases of rubylite, smoky quartz, morganite. All of them can be created or intensify their color with artificial irradiation, and no indication will be seen. But in some cases, for example, in smoky quartz, in some cases, the gem may fade back to its original color over time upon exposing it to light or high temperature. And in this case, it's not affecting the price, but there is here a more vital need for proper disclosure regarding the stability of the treatment.
By the way, Guy, I saw also some questions here about topaz. There are topaz that are blue and they are natural, no radiation, and they were quite rare and quite expensive. The trouble is that there is so much now irradiation into topaz that suddenly it became a very common color. However, I know for a fact that quite a few dealers look for topaz which have not undergone radiation, and you can check the radiation in topaz. You can see the peak there. So I think that in certain cases, once you can identify that the stone is irradiated, it's affecting the price. But as you said, in the case of topaz and then others, it's so common today, the radiation, that everybody looks at the blue topaz and immediately think this was irradiated. And he's probably right, because most of them are.
I will just emphasize what you said. Regarding the natural blue topaz, some of the light blue topaz, those that are looking like a pale sky blue, are still getting a very low pricing, like between, let's say, $25 to $40 a carat. But once the saturation is a little bit stronger, then you see it clearly that the price become, as Menachem said, extremely jumping. Okay, just a small demo to show this effect. I think we can go with rubylite. If we'll take red tourmaline. and select, let's say, a 3-carat gem, and let's say it's of a very good color. Now, if the gem is untreated, it will be around $460 a carat. If I'm changing it to irradiation, we are still talking on the same prices. It's there is no effect here because the
assumption
treatment
is it's irradiated, yes.
And that's it for today. We would like now, if you have some question, to add them to the question and answers chat. In the meantime, while you are typing, I would like our guests here to give 2 to 3 minutes each about their initiative. Tom, would you like to start?
Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Menachem, for providing this webinar this morning. Guy's asked me to share a little bit of what we call QL2 or Quantum Leap 2. We've been in the market since 1987, starting in DOS with appraisal software and transitioned through a Mac platform and also, and then of course, Windows platform in early 90s. QL2 is our cloud effort, and it's been under development for about 6 years now and is in late beta stage. And it takes advantage of the cloud with sharing. It's easy for multiple users to share directly through their browser without networking. And it provides a stabilized data platform in the cloud across these platforms of Windows and Macintosh and Chrome. The advantages, it also takes advantage of the Chrome browser and optimizing the interface and encouraging ease of use. In fact, one of our beta testers referred to it as elegantly simple. And I'll end with that. I should say you can find out more about us on the internet at qlss.com.
Shirley, take the lead.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Guy. Thank you, Menachem. And thank you for buddying with me, Tom, or letting me buddy with you, should I say. Okay, so I'm obviously, as most of you know, I'm an appraiser, valuer. And in January this year, we 14 of valuers, the top valuers in the UK, came together to create a valuation association that is completely independent. It's autonomous. We have our prime focus is our members, the public, and education. In providing the highest level of valuations to this country. We have already exceeded 120 members. We have our website going live tomorrow, which is really exciting. And we have our conference, COVID willing, in September at Loughborough University. We have an appraisal education package being worked on at the moment in collaboration with another valuers association, and we hope to launch that towards the end of this year as well. And yes, if you would like to know more, then info@thejva.org, and I can help furnish you with more information. But we have also Tom, who was our first international member. Delighted to have Tom there, but we also have members in Australia as well, and Greece, and yes, we're looking forward to the future very much. So thank you for allowing me to talk about us and where we're going.
I would just like to say that as a member of an international member of JVA, I've been most impressed with the way the organization has evolved and how proactive it has been at promoting gemological and valuation science education to its members. It really stands out as a stellar effort so far.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, both of you. I will just mention that links to the QL2 and the JVA websites will be added to the follow-up email that we are sending to all of our members, as well as your email addresses, so people could also refer direct question to you if they have. Now we will move to the questions.
Guy, I saw that there were several questions regarding how does a Gemewizard system collects the prices around the world. I mean, Tom Underwood knows that, and we have showed him the back office, and you know.
Also, Shirley, I've seen it in Tucson.
Also, Shirley, what we do is we actually scan around $300 to $400 million of goods that are available on the net. Apart from goods that other people allow us, we actually check only companies that we know and that we appreciate their knowledge. It can be companies like main jewelers, and it can be a major dealer in Bangkok or in thing. And we have what we call the 0 point. That means who's reporting these prices. We have a way of collecting it. That means if a person, let's say in the mine, reporting for us that the price for such a thing is $1,000, the same stone may cost in Bangkok, because it's a dealer, $1,300, and then a dealer in New York will sell it for $1,600, and in the actual store, it will be sold for $2,200. So as you see, it depends who's reporting. Our system algorithm knows who's reporting and creates the ability to estimate what is the position of that person towards our what we call 0 point. And the collection of this information brings that to the fact that our algorithm, people that saw it say it's amazing, managed to create what we call automatic price list. That means people that report to us from Bangkok, from Australia, from Africa, from shops around the world, from major dealers in America, and then it's collected and it creates a price list that is changing every month without the interference of any dealer or whatever. It's all done totally automatic. If we had the time, Guy, we could have shown a little bit in the back, but
today we do not have this time. Maybe next time.
And people should know what is their position to it. So that means the price in the Gemewizard is approximately the price that should be that a store should buy it for, a little bit cushioned, let's say 20%. So if you are a dealer in Bangkok, you should know that your price should be 30% less than that, than the Gemewizard price. And you have a place in the Gemewizard where you can place your position and say, okay, my prices are 30% less than Gemewizard prices on rubies, sapphires, and emeralds, etc. On diamonds, it's such and such. So you always should find what is your position compared to the price list and the 0 point of Gemewizard. Because, you know, price, as I told you, for a dealer in New York is not the same price for a dealer in Bangkok for the same stone. So depends who's looking at it.
Okay, I'm moving to the next question. This is a question that I'm not sure that one of us can answer. When was heat treatment for rubies first used? And I think it's the answer is hundreds or thousands of years. Tom, do you have a better answer?
I was merely going to say Menachem is the oldest one here, so maybe he's has knowledge of that. But I agree with you, Guy. Gemstones, intentionally or not, have been heated for, well, I hesitate to say millennia, but certainly centuries.
I would just mention here a good colleague of us that is giving also webinars about the historical point of gemstones. His name is Rui Galopin de Carvalho, and I suggest to look for his webinar on the net for rubies. I'm sure you will find the answer there. Next question.
By the way, when I came to Bangkok the first time, which was 45 years ago, I was more than 5 years old, but I came there and I was buying stones there. There was definitely already a history of hitting of rubies. By the way, sapphires that came from Sri Lanka on a vast scale and from Madagascar, the Bangkok people were the first one who actually learned how to cook the sapphires, and that was done in the 70s. I actually saw it happening in front of my eye. Sapphire was not something that has got a big history of heating, but rubies, from what we know, a lot of time we can check it, we never thought of checking, but certainly before I was born, and that was 69 years ago.
Okay, the next question is by Vivek. How to detect if the stone has been heated or treated with a 10 times or 20 times loop? Is there an easier way for the client? I'll give you the gemological point of view. Till, let's say, 20 years ago, you could have seen some indications regarding heating. For example, some dissolved needles or some discoid fractures which not yet recrystallized, meaning that they are very young and happened recently surrounding crystals. The problem is that in the recent years, there are more low temperature heating processes and also more controlled heating processes that leaving less indications that can be identified with traditional gemological tools and usually need the assistance of an FTIR spectrometer in order to see this. The next question by Shibuike, I hope I pronounce it right. What about the price effects of beryllium heat treatments used to enhance colors of ink blue sapphires? Who would you like to answer?
I can say that I saw these stones coming about, at least 2 decades ago, and the price is really drops down. Once they use that thing, the price drops down to several dozen dollars a carat. I saw 3 carats, top quality, which were treated that way, which are about $30 to $50 a carat. So even supposed to be something that is difficult to identify. However, we can identify in the lab easily, but the price is nothing to do with the same color, which is natural.
Yeah, it's my experience that when it comes to beryllium treated sapphire, it all really falls into one bucket. It doesn't matter what color it is, and it really is minimally priced for anywhere from $5 or $10 a carat up to $50 a carat wholesale. This certainly is not a scientific way to identify beryllium treated, but beryllium treated sapphire often has this very intense bubblegum-like quality to the color. And as soon as I see it as an appraiser, if I can't get context that it is beryllium treated, the first thing I do is say this really needs to go to a laboratory that can run advanced testing on it. But the big problem, of course, and this is true for some other treated gemstones, is that the cost of a laboratory report often exceeds the value of the gemstone.
We call it in the lab too good to be true. When we see a stone, like we had, in fact, last week we had sapphire, which was at almost 10 karat, beautiful stone, and it was, I should say, orange, amazing orange stone. You know, I was thinking, first of all, I looked at it and I said, too good to be true. But especially when the person told me that he bought what we call in Hebrew metzia, which means a bargain, he bought a bargain for $60 a carat in Bangkok. So I realized the person doesn't know, because if this would have been a natural orange gem like it was, at least a couple of $1,000 a carat, huh, guys? At least.
At least.
And that was the color that...
And the color, you know, as I think that exactly as Tom, you mentioned, it was looking too sparkling, too good to be true.
Okay.
And I would just add, it seems to me that that orange and pod parasha, orangey pink color was really the first time we saw beryllium treatment. It was, of course, 10, 15 years ago, I forget exactly, but 1 year at Tucson, I mean, normally you would see a handful of pod parasha stones, and then that 1 year they were everywhere. They were just everywhere, and that was the first beryllium treated color that came out.
I would just add here that in Tucson, something like 10 years ago, I've seen, together with a friend, we looked at a dealer that was a kind of sorting his fancy colored sapphires into two piles, and we couldn't understand the logic behind the sorting until we understood that everything is beryllium treated there, and he just sorted between what can look like natural ones and what surely looks like treated ones. So he will know how to show them, how to disclose on them.
Well, I've seen in Bangkok stones about half a carat before they were beryllium treated, and they were just pile of junk stones. And when they come back, they suddenly all sparkle, orange yellow, amazing orange yellow. So really, the difference between it is the price of treatment and junk material. That is it.
Next question.
Well, just to finish up on beryllium, let's remember, as long as there's full disclosure, there's a market, and there's every reason to take those ugly gems and turn them into beautiful gems.
Yeah.
There is a market for that, but disclosure establishes the market and the value in the market.
Of course.
Of course. Next question is by Antoinette, which I understood that already left the chat, but it's a very important question. Can you comment on the irradiated yellow sapphires? It was known to fade. Is it still the case, or have they learned how to irradiate it so the yellow color is more stable? So the answer is that they don't know yet how to control it, but according to recent research done in GIA, led by their head gemologist, Shane McClure, they found that some yellow sapphires after the irradiation can stay stable. They still do not understand which one will fade and which one will stay stable, but they found that there are yellow sapphires that can retain this color for a long time.
From what I know, and I've seen it done, that was already more than 10 years ago, irradiated sapphires to turn yellow were heated, and the one that kept the color after the heating, not top heating to 1,800 degrees, but around 1,100, between 900 and 1,100, the one that kept the color after heating to about 1,000 were the one that actually kept it longer. Otherwise, from what we saw, for example, from this shop in Tel Aviv that had these beautiful yellows that they bought in the Far East, and they faded just while being in the front of the shop, in the shop window, and the sun was hitting them, and the color fades. By the way, this happens to quite a lot of treated stones, and also not so treated stones from time to time lose their color on exposure to direct light.
Thank you. Daisy, thank you for the compliments. David, how heating will affect the value of Paraiba. This one, I would like answer of all of you. Who is starting?
I can start if it's okay with you. First of all, from what we know and from what we checked, if we are talking about Paraiba that came from Paraiba, tourmalines, most of them are heated in some way, and they, although they may tell you 10 times that are not heated, most of them are heated. Sometimes you get the natural ones. It's very difficult to know because the inclusions remain intact. As you remember, we saw the one guy from Brazil that came.
Yes.
But in fact, from Africa, from various locations in Africa, the African Paraiba, what they call, and we are allowed to call it Paraiba like tourmaline or whatever, practically all of them are heated or sometimes even a touch irradiated in order to create this color, and the irradiation is undetectable. We sent it to the lab that can check irradiation. We couldn't check it. However, there is practically, you see some of the inclusions inside exploding, probably because of the heating. But I know from a fact, because I travel, quite often, not now because I can't, to Africa. You see the stones, this greenish, heavily, almost brownish thing that after heating, in a controlled manner, they change into this beautiful Paraiba-like African Paraiba stones. So, in my opinion, practically all of them are treated in some way. The most beautiful ones are, of course, the ones that come from Paraiba itself, and that they are natural. That means that they came out of the ground without any treatments whatsoever. But in my opinion, what we see today, and we see suddenly quite a big quantity of Paraiba. Tom, have you gone around, around Tucson this year? There were a lot of big Paraibas, or whatever they call them, Paraibas around the shows, which we never saw before. And I think that this is some kind of heat treatment of tourmaline that they found a way to change it into this amazing color, this whatever glowing Paraiba color.
Yeah, I think several things. Menachem, you apparently have more time to wander around the Tucson show than I do. Tend to be more busy at my booth, so I didn't notice any increase in Paraiba presence. But the other thing is that really country of origin is so important with Paraiba. Did it come from the Paraiba minor locality in Brazil, or did it come from Africa? And that affects the overall color perception as well, but also the value in the marketplace. I really have no direct experience in treatment, and I can't speak to that.
Shirley,
Okay. Shirley, would you like to add something?
No, I think you've covered it all. Yeah, I think you've.
How does the British market react to Paraiba? Real Paraiba from Paraiba or African Paraiba? Do they differentiate in the pricing there in England?
I think without a doubt, the colour's completely different for a start, isn't it? So yeah, without a doubt. But there's very, very little other than African material on the market now. So yeah, and there's no doubt that if you've got a report from on a Paraiba from Paraiba, then yes, you've got something special. As long as again, it's the same thing with anything. It depends on the stone that you've got, on the quality issue. But the prices have certainly significantly risen. Certainly significantly risen.
Friends,
Okay.
we are getting a lot of compliments here, I see.
Yes, I just want to answer all questions that we had here. There is a question from Suresh. There is no real answer for that. How would you know from Bangkok or India where would be better place to buy stones, and if it's a real stone or not? it's not depending on origin, where are you buying. It's depending on the seller. You need to find a reputable seller, and also it's always better to verify it in a lab. I don't want to, to give here grades to different markets. It's not fair and it's not correct to do.
Oh, well, also you should choose a lab that is reputable, and there are a lot of labs in India that are very good reputation. There are labs in Bangkok with good reputation, and in the States, of course, GIA, AGL, whatever, in Europe, SSEF, Googling, whatever, laboratories. But is it possible to determine where it is better to buy the stone? Depending who's supplying to you and how honest the person is, and you have to know who you're buying from. That's why, yes, you have to know your source.
Yep. The next question by Katie Saul. When writing an appraisal, do you ever offer a replacement cost for a stone with less treatment, and what that value would be?
I would do that on request. I certainly would not do it as a normal practice. My report would declare there was treatment, and possibly the nature of the treatment, probably not the extent of the treatment, because I'm not equipped to evaluate that. If the client requested what would be the difference between a treated and non-treated stone, all other characteristics being equal, I would certainly provide that. I will say it's not uncommon for that to happen verbally, to have a conversation with the client about that fact, that issue.
Shirley, would you like to?
We get quite a lot of things like that people tell me, yeah, but this stone, if it wasn't treated, if it wasn't heat treated, what would have been the price, and where can we get? We may offer them the price of Gemewizard for the same thing, which is not heated, depending who's the person in front of us. But we never sort of tell them that, yes, go, you can buy it there or whatever. The thing is that I think that finding the difference of price of heated or treatment of something and non-treatment is quite a general thing that should be verbally explained, as Tom said. I think that this is only in a conversation. You can't suddenly send them, okay, if this was natural, you would have paid $10,000 total for it, just by writing. I think that this is, as you say, Tom, it should be explained to the people.
Well, this would really come up if it were in the report. There would be a unique intended use for that report. Right, as opposed to simply insurance. There might be a legal case involved, something like that. That's where it's usually going to be in the report and very, very well defined and researched. I will say, jumping back to the subject though, that the question of, gee, what if it were, occurs more around origin than it does around treatment, at least in my experience. What if it were a Colombian emerald instead of the Zambian emerald, all other things being equal?
Sheila, would you like to add something from the British market?
No, because my thoughts on that is it's a hypothetical question, and it depends on why you're being asked. Because if you're valuing something that's in your hand, you're valuing that piece. How long's a piece of string? If can you imagine what the color would be if there was no treatment, or can you imagine this if it was Sri Lankan versus Burmese, or so and so on? It's hypothetical. So certainly wouldn't do it for insurance, because there's no requirement, because that would be classed, if you're doing something like that, would be classed as betterment, for instance. It is what it is. What you've got in your hand is what you're valuing. However, as Tom said, if there's another reason, and I can think of one where I have acted on, there was, and I was sold, not I personally, but the client was sold a Colombian emerald. However, when valued a bit later, it was not deemed to be Colombian, it was deemed to be something else. Therefore, then you're putting a hypothetical situation. Well, I bought Colombian, I got this, what would it be if it was Colombian now? That's a different thing. It's a different, the intended use is different, the purpose is different. So I think then you can start using hypotheticals because that's quite specific to that particular piece. But ordinarily, no, I wouldn't change something in an evaluation of assurance because that's actually not what I've got. So I hope that answers that one.
Okay, thank you. We have two last questions. The first one, I think the answer is very simple. It's a question from Woomba. I hear that many stones from West Africa are cut and polished in Thailand. Is this true? I think the answer is yes. Thailand is it's a world polishing center,
and also India,
and also India. And these two centers are getting most of the goods around the world. And the second question is by Jitendra, and I'm not sure if we have the answer here. Where there is a lab that doing irradiation processes for morganite. Are you aware of one of these labs? I know in general that there is one in the US, but I don't know exactly which company and where it's located.
There used to be, I think it was General Atomics here in San Diego, but they discontinued doing irradiation probably almost 2 decades ago. They were doing it just tons of blue topaz. And I saw in the chat earlier, someone stated, isn't irradiation bad for you? They actually had to have a license and of course testing so that the radiation level had reduced itself to a non-harmful level before they would even release the stones back to the gem dealer who submitted them. But it's been a long time since they've been doing any treatment. I know that as a fact because they came to me with a closet full of blue topaz, and oddly, they wanted to get rid of it, but they no longer had the license to test it. Even though the radiation was obviously gone, they didn't have a license to test it, so they literally had to throw it away. They couldn't even donate it.
I will just add here that regarding blue topaz is a case where a gem, after being irradiated, is continuing to expose some irradiations for some time. And for that, there is a law in the US it's been kept by the nuclear authority. I don't remember exactly the name of the authority, but it means that every blue topaz entering to the US or irradiated inside the US must enter into quarantine, which is currently a very common word. But the stones need to enter into quarantine for at least 2 months. And only after 2 months, they can be sold inside the country.
I just wanted to add something about, I don't know if you remember it, Guy. We had one time a lady came to us with a paper that one of the jewelers in Israel gave her, saying to her that she has a nice natural sapphire, 5 carat for, I think he gave her $5,000. And he said that the stone is, is not heated, etc. He checked it, it was a gemologist. And then it came to our laboratory and she said, is that a logical value? I said, no, I think that it's, we looked at it inside, we didn't talk to her. And then I gave it to Guy, and the guy told me, Menachem, do you realize this is a Kashmir sapphire? I told him, what? That was a Kashmir sapphire. And we told the lady, that stone that you are holding, it came out from her grandfather or whatever in Russia. That stone that you are holding is a Kashmir sapphire, 5.5 carats, and it's probably worth about $30,000 a carat. And she said, what? You see, people don't realize that just because of origin, the same thing So that means it was better for her, first of all, to go to a laboratory, determine where the origin is, or to the best of the knowledge of the laboratory, a good laboratory, what is the origin, and only that really established the value. So as Shirley said, you know, it's something that you can't answer. Somebody comes to you with a question that you are thinking maybe it's treated, but in the end you have exactly the opposite thing, telling him not only that it's not heated, but you have something very rare in your hand, a Kashmir 5.5 carat, which is fantastic. I think she sold it in an auction there for $18,000 a carat, you know, after getting paid whatever, 20% to the auctioneers there. And I think this was absolutely crazy. The person, the jeweler didn't try to cheat her. The price that he was saying was logical, but he never believed that this is a Kashmir sapphire. You remember that song, guy?
I'm taking you back to questions regarding treatment because I have one here that I see that I missed by Mona Miller. Is it possible that we can test to see if the gemstones contain cobalt on an XRF? So I will answer it without even the XRF mentioning. You can identify if there is a cobalt enriched glass inside a sapphire, usually by just lifting a loop and looking for these blue streaming lines, swirl marks inside the gem. And if it's something more gentle or done on a deep blue body color, and it's a little bit more difficult to see, it's usually still available via spectroscope, or if we are looking on advanced instrumentation, you can use XRF or UVV spectrometer.
We use UVV.
I think we just covered everything here. So thank you everyone that stayed till now. We have more than 100 people still in the room, so I really appreciate your dedication to us. Again, we will send you a follow-up email with all the email addresses of the panelists here to continue with questions if you have, and also with some referrals to the JVA Association and the QL2 software. And I also will mention that all the information that you have seen in this presentation is part of courses that we are offering, and a specific offer with what we call the COVID-19 complimentary prize that we are currently giving. This offer will be sent to you, an offer for the courses and offer for the pricing system that Menachem demonstrated through the webinar. Thank you again for joining. Those of you that are still under lockdown or in red areas, as they call it, please take care of yourself and stay safe. And we will try to continue entertain you in our next webinars. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much, Shirley. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, Menachem.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Guy, for great leadership of the presentation, Guy. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. See you in the next webinar.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.